Croeso Marvel Moiders. My name is Dom. It's always Dom. It's Dom again today. Maybe one day it won't be Dom, who knows. And Marvel Moiders is me talking about all the Marvel films and TV shows that have been made since Blade back in the 1998. It's Father's Day yesterday, so I was wearing my Dad's Off Duty t-shirt, although I'm not convinced that dads are ever really fully on duty. My daughter bought it for me and she was so sad when I thought, I'm not sure I can wear this. This is a few years ago, that I thought I'd have to wear it every Father's Day. So she says, Dad, please stop wearing that embarrassing t-shirt, which is probably only a few seconds away. This time around, I've come here to sit down in this chair and talk to you about X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's all about the hair. It's the last of the noughties, so maybe after this film things will be getting a bit more culturally sensitive, although we've got Iron Man 2 coming up, so I'm not convinced that's the case. This Wolverine film was meant to be the beginning of an X-Men Origins series from Fox, focusing on the fan favourites like Wolverine, like Magneto and like Gambit. But the other origin stories never found their way out of a development hell. This film did, though, become the beginning of a kind of Wolverine trilogy. It was followed by the Japan-based The Wolverine in 2014, and then the crushingly tragic Logan in 2017. Those two later films were both directed by James Mangold, but this movie was directed by the South African Gavin Hood. The Gavin Hood. It was offered to Zack Snyder. Yikes. But he was too busy making a really boring version of Watchmen, so we were spared his fake angst, adolescent, rainy version of Logan. The trilogy is underrated, I would say, to the point of really not even being recognised as a trilogy. By the time it gets to Logan, it's at full power. But now we're dealing with the foothills, the difficult beginning. The script was by a guy called David Benioff, who had been chasing the idea of writing a Wolverine film for years, apparently, but he's better known for adapting Game of Thrones for the screen. It takes elements from a few different titles, the Wolverine film, that feature Wolverine. There's the Origin series that was published in the early noughties, which obviously a lot of the beginning of the film draws from. There was Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X storyline from the Marvel Presents title in 1991. And then there's also how that story carried on in Volume 2 of the Wolverine title, in the Dreams of Gore story that dealt with Logan dealing with the traumatic past of things that happened in the Weapon X story. The Weapon X storyline in the comic is really chopped up. It moves around in time, there's loads of hallucinations, it's not clear whether something's really happening or it's being imagined. And this reflects how messed up Wolverine's psyche is by all the wars he's been sent to, by all the experiments that have been done on him, by the adamantium in his body, abuse that he's basically had because he's this mutant. The movie is a way neater version of this same story. And perhaps that's why it doesn't quite work. Everything is too tidy, because they're trying to make it a more romantic film. The hair is a really key kind of thing. In the comic, the hair cannot be contained. When Logan is getting prepped for this big adamantium bonding procedure to his skeleton, which is something that he has been kidnapped to do in the comic, not volunteered for or manipulated into volunteering for, all of his hair, body and his head are shaved. But the hair completely grows back within about 20 minutes. The movie Wolverine is way too groomed. There's a symbolism in there because the hair represents the animal side of things, and that is being tidied up a lot for the movie. Oh, Canada, old Logan's native land. Wolverine as a character came into existence because a Marvel editor wanted a Canadian superhero. There wasn't really at the time any hint of what a huge character Wolverine would become, or Badger, as he was almost called, which I keep mentioning because I like it so much as a fact. Wolverine was just like a costumed superhero working for the Canadian government. The character was then made part of the new X-Men series that were relaunched in 1975 in the Giant X-Men issue. And he gradually became more of a storied character as he got worked on by Chris Claremont and that man again, Frank Miller. And the artist, John Byrne, who also had a lot of input on the story, he was a cranky Canuck himself. He wanted Wolverine to remain in the X-Men because he wanted some Canadian representation. It's interesting that the Canadian image has two sides. There's the very polite, bilingual, kind of Canadian figure. And then there's the Wolverine type, the lumberjack, the not polite, the ones who aren't interested in non-violent resolution, if that's not too many negatives for you. Does Wolverine even speak any French? This double image of the polite apologizer and the backwards lumberjack type, Wolverine has definitely picked a side, and it is probably the side that John Byrne would prefer as well. He's not known for his diplomacy either. When Byrne was drawing the character of the X-Men, he was inspired by a character called Tim, Dr. Hook McCracken, in the 1977 ice hockey comedy Slapshot. And again, is this the same shadowy kind of side of the Canadian psyche of the hairy nutter that they seem to let rip a bit more in ice hockey than maybe their other sports? Logan's Canadian roots are highlighted in this movie a few times. It opens in the Northwest Territories with him as an 8-year-old in 1845, a sickly 8-year-old at that, whose mutations haven't manifested until he witnesses his dad killing his dad. What do you mean? Well, it turns out that James Howlett's, which is Logan's original name, dad, John Howlett, who's played by Peter O'Brien, who was an Aussie actor and an original Ramsay from off of the massive 80s Australian soap Neighbours, John wasn't actually his dad. And the violently alcoholic groundskeeper Thomas Logan, the name, was his biological father. Very soap opera type situation. This news is quite shocking. What's more shocking is the dad killing the dad. This would be enough to make anyone protrude bones from between their knuckles. And that's what happens. Then wee Jimmy kills his real dad for killing his fake dad. And Jimmy and his half-brother Victor run off into the mid-19th century Canadian night. But you can never really take the Canada out of the boy, can you? Maple syrup. It's thicker than blood, eh? Here, I would suggest waving a pen is the central problem with this movie. Well, this and the dialogue, which is not great. Wolverine is caught between being a mean, lean, whooshing, snicking killing machine and a handsomely coiffured love machine when he's supposed to be caught between being an animal and human. He has to make a choice in the film between following his military duty and staying at home with his woman, not the animal-human dynamic. And I think, again, this is what the hair represents. In the comics, in the imagined Bob Hoskins verse, Logan was hedged thick with body hair. It grows stubbornly and inconveniently everywhere, whereas the movie Logan is baby smooth. At one point, Wolverine resembles an angry, sexy meat sculpture. So he's not animal and human. It's more about whether he's a lover or a fighter. Logan has a love interest in this film. Of course, did I mention that Hugh Jackman was involved in writing the film? Kayla Silverfox, who is the love interest in this film, is a character from the Niitsitapi Nation in the comics, otherwise known as the Blackfoot Nation. She gets involved in all the chaos of Wolverine's PTSD-addled, psychically battered mental health issues. The relationship is romantic, but the story is so muddled, it isn't really clear who she is. She could be CIA, she could be a random person drawn into this. In the film, Logan finds Kayla, after they've had this relationship, has been murdered by Victor, otherwise known as Sabretooth. And he sets out to avenge this death. Now, this film has got a lot of film noir aspects. In the comic, they were already there as well, but they've been amped up a bit in the movie. Kayla, in the comic, there's hallucinations involved, but she doesn't have the sneaky seduction superpowers that Kayla Silver Fox in the film has. And Logan finds out that not only is she not dead, but she's been working for Stryker and the bad guys all the time, manipulating him, which puts her in an interesting kind of film noir position in that she, as a character, gets to be fridged and play the femme fatale. Lucky her. Silver Fox is played by very gorgeous Lynn Collins, who also has some First Nation heritage herself, but that's the love interest / femme fatale / fridged girlfriend character that does a lot of load bearing in this film. On the other hand, on the fighter side, the damage from war is a big theme through this film. He and his brother Victor, who's also a Sabretooth, a regenerative mutant with special claws, they seem to drift into one-arm conflict after another for over 100 years. The American Civil War right up to the Vietnam War. This film takes place in 1979. Makes for quite a cool opening montage, setting the scene for his PTSD going through all these conflicts. X-Men franchise is always keen to point out how being a mutant is traumatic enough, but there's this extra layer of war being kind of lathered over the whole thing as well. As I keep mentioning, Marvel Comics introduced a lot of traumatized characters in the mid-70s as the US tried to come to terms with the moral morass of its foreign policy. You know, as the Vietnam War messed with the country's glorious self-image. You know, we've got Punisher, or Wolverine as he became, not so much his original appearance. We've got Ghost Rider. There's lots of this sense of America having to come to terms with things. The problem with the film is, though, that Fox didn't really want any PTSD harshing their good-looking dude on a vengeful kick vibe. But yeah, Chris Claremont, Frank Miller left their fingerprints all over the character when he got his own series in 1982 off the back of the X-Men, and it introduced the line of "I'm the best at what I do, and what I do is not very nice" tagline. But that 82 series, actually, the Japanophilia storyline is the basis for the next Wolverine film in a couple of years. Fox were never afraid to throw a lot of characters into any of the projects that they did, especially if you wanted to whack the letter X in there somewhere. In this film, we've got a whole basement full of mutants in cages to offer kind of tempting glimpses for dedicated Easter egg hunters to pick up on. It's a bit frustrating, though. The quality level maybe isn't very high because the quantity level is really gone for. There's a character that is heavily suggested as Emma Frost. She has the same diamond turning powers, and she's meant to be Silver Fox's sister. That's all very messy, doesn't really make sense. Movies, maybe American movies in particular, love to have a team of dryly witty tough guys in them, but it's never as effortlessly cool to achieve as they try to pretend. Genuine wit and cool is not that widely available. The Weapon X team had quite a few characters turn up, some working better than others. I'm glad they gave more of a role to Sabretooth in this and made them half brothers. It gives it a lot of depth, which was the idea, and also Liev Schreiber is really class in this film. Really good menace, good cinema.
You even know how to kill me. I'm gonna cut your head off. See if that works.
Imagine my surprise when it seemed that Will.i.am did a decent job of playing John Wraith, even if he was a bit predictable.
You're predictable.
I like Dominic Monaghan a lot. As Bolt, there was some quiet pathos going on there amidst all the howling bombast and kind of glib, fake cynicism, rather like sincerity. If you can fake cynicism, you know, you've got it made. At least his character Bolt was committed, and it wasn't just a string of fat jokes. Looking at you, people who wrote Blob into this.
Hey, Fat, Fred.
Daniel Henney was Agent Zero, who was taking on the role that Maverick played in the comics as the shooting guy. But his performance is kind of as disposable as his character turned out to be. By the way, I am never getting in a helicopter if I so much as suspect a tiny amount that I'm in a movie. Way too dangerous. And I often suspect that I am in a movie because I have that kind of brain problem. Danny Houston plays a younger version of William Stryker, only a major at this point in the army, and he gives the whole thing plenty of poise and bite. The young Cyclops manages to get even shorter shrift than in other films. The poor guy, I hope Doomsday gives him some justice. I kind of like the Boy Scout characters. I'm not a great fan of Taylor Kitsch as Gambit. He doesn't quite have the pizzazz that the character requires, although, to be honest, I'm not a massive fan of the Gambit character either. It's a bit too much of a, hey, devilish ladies man for me.
2 years I rotting in that hell and I ain't never gonna.
I don't know whether it's the budget or the script, but Kitsch doesn't really pop. He's Kitsch by name, but not by screen presence, perhaps. Anyway, the plan was, I think, was to introduce that character and then do an X-Men Origins film for him. But all that awaited Gambit was 15 years of development limbo until... Xavier even makes a cameo right at the end to set up the X-Men thing again. Hi, X-Men, I shall look after you. There he is, putting the X into Botox in his de-aged appearance. However, there is one character that pretty much defines how this film is remembered, and he has even less body hair than Logan. Mutant Killer, maybe Mutant Survivor would be a better title, as Deadpool managed to jump ship from Fox to Disney in a relatively uncomplicated way quite quickly. This, however, was not a great introduction in this film. In fact, they messed up bringing him into the Fox universe a kind of little bit massively. Why would you hire Ryan Reynolds and then seal his mouth shut?
Thank you, sir. You look really nice today.
Strange decision. Although he hasn't quite got that nerdy pansexual tone from the Deadpool movies that he will do, not at this point. He's more of a standard issue, smart-ass, big mouth, tough guy type of thing. I don't think he has his regeneration powers in this movie either, at least not until they steal some of Logan's DNA to add to the mix, so his origin story is quite different. This Deadpool was very much like the Gaia from off of Secret Invasion. They chucked in John Wraith's teleportation, Cyclops' percussive blasts, and of course the adamantium skeleton and healing factor that we've come to know and deeply love. It's all about the decapitation, lads, in this movie, which is what does for Deadpool. This seems to be the only way they think you can kill anyone who regenerates. Chop his body off. What really killed the film in terms of killing mutants was the dubious, what's called a work print, I think, that was leaked on DVD a couple of days before the movie came out. The special effects looked really bad because it wasn't finished. I don't know who leaked it, but that pretty much killed the film, I think. Like the Deadpool fight with Logan and Sabretooth, I like when his head is chopped off and it spirals down, messing up the cooling tower at the nuclear power station. That's excellent. I think it just got completely ruined by the leak with all the terrible special effects. So yeah, the Mutant Killer killed. The text within a text is a theme I kind of bump into quite a bit. We had the importance of being earnest in Spider-Man 2. In this movie, it's this traditional First Nations story of the moon and her lover Qu'e Qu'ats Who. The moon and the lover Qu'e Qu'ats Who live together in the spirit world, but another spirit, Trickster, coveted the moon and so tricked Qu'e Qu'ats Who to leave the spirit world to get some wild roses for the moon. But Qu'e Qu'ats Who didn't realise that he could not return to the spirit world. This story Kayla tells to Wolverine just before she is apparently killed, and it has a big impact on him. It kind of sets the narrative for what he thinks their relationship is. So the moon is lonely. Qu'e Qu'ats Who is devastated, howls at the moon on a regular basis. Qu'e Qu'ats Who, so the stinger runs, actually means the Wolverine. This is the reason why he chooses his codename in the future to get stamped on his dog tags, because he thinks he's going to be avenging Kayla's murder. He thinks when he finds out that Silver Fox has been working for the bad guys all the time, that she was the trickster. He thought she was the moon and he was Qu'e Qu'ats Who, but no, she was the trickster. However, his first instinct was correct. I think the trickster is Stryker, because he is manipulating all of the bad guys in the film. Sabretooth, Silver Fox, he's offering them all something that they're desperate
We just need
for.
a little more time.
And it's he that makes sure that Logan can never touch Kayla again. He even makes sure that he can't even touch her with his mind, that he completely forgets her. He's the trickster. He's the baddie. Wolverine is the Wolverine, and Silver Fox is the moon. At one point, Stryker says that he swears on his son's life that he's telling the truth, but then we know from X2 what is in store in his son's life. We even see Jason Stryker frozen as a strikesicle with his two different coloured eyes, and we find out that he was the first mutant experimented on to make the Weapon 11, the Deadpool character, with Logan being the final piece of the puzzle. Stryker is clearly a horrible, horrible character. This isn't a classic film, but it is one that I'll watch whenever it turns up on Film 4 or whatever. And I do have a few likes and dislikes to unleash upon yous all. I like them choosing 3 Mile Island as the historically significant evil lair, even if it doesn't quite make sense in terms of the nuclear accident that actually happened there in 1979. I like that. It's a clever little bit of positioning. I really like the out of focus reveal that shows that Silver Fox is alive and working for the bad guys. I mean, I like all the in focus shots of Silver Fox as well. Yowza. If she's the Silver Fox, I can't imagine who the Gold Fox title would go to. But anyway, I like the ghostly fate that Stryker is given to walk the earth by Silver Fox's tacto-hypnosis, I think they call it in the film. That means she controls him and gets him to go off and walk around the world, even though walking is for as long as until his feet bleeds. Apparently wears his shoe leather out before he grows a beard. His shoes, military shoes, must be rubbish. The moral stakes in the film aren't very convincing. There's always this kind of thing of, oh, Logan, are you going to be a monster? You're going to be an animal. Never really convinces. We know you're a good guy.
You wanted the animal, Colonel. You got it.
Yeah, right, buddy. This is Hollywood. It's all about redemption. Likewise, the boggy flashback scenes. It takes a very skilled directorial hand to land those kind of things, like, you know, your Hitchcock or your David Lynch. These skilled hands are not here. I kind of dislike how they killed off the sweet old couple in the Rockies. It's bad enough that his son had obviously died in the Vietnam War to give Wolverine the bike and the jacket, but the bullet through the orange juice, that's nasty. I also found out that the two of them were named after two of the Alpha Flight team, who were like the Canadian pack of superheroes that Marvel invented in the 70s and that Logan was a member of. Vindicator and Guardian. Sneaky, these writers, these tricksters. I don't like magic adamantium very much. It's a bit like how vibranium is magic in the Wakandan stuff, but at least they say that it is magic, and so some of its other properties make sense. adamantium is just meant to be really durable. But then, magic stuff, that's the price of admission for superhero films. You can't really complain about that too much. I do like how it's like almost like a silver bullet, though. It's kind of like the Wolverine equivalent of a werewolf having to be shot with a silver bullet, shot with an adamantium bullet. Okay, that's my impression of X-Men Origins Wolverine, awkwardly coloned 3-word title. What do you think? Do you bless this mess? Are you popping one in its dome, turn back time style? What do you think? Do a comment. Give me a like if you want. Be interested to hear what any of you think about this messy piece of Canadian bacon. Next up, Iron Man 2. Robert Downey is back and his ego is about to eat the world. Of course, this film includes a fawning cameo for Elon Musk. Of course. In the meantime, grow your own wild roses in your heart so that you needn't risk leaving the spirit world in order to present them to the special lunar lady in your life. And I shall catch you further on downstream.